I'm Pat. Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay. I'm Christina, and I'm going to residency at John Peter Smith in Texas.
I'm Pat. I'm going to residency at Loyola in Chicago.
I'm Landon. I'm doing residency at Wake Forest in North Carolina.
Hey, I'm Tori. I'm going to LSU Baton Rouge.
Okay, I think that was everybody. Does anybody have any questions for them? If not, I have some questions from the form I can just read out. But if anyone wants to just ask anything, you can go ahead. Okay, I'll just ask one. So we got a question. It says, were you interested in any other specialties besides EM? If so, why did you pick EM?
I guess I can start. I was always like pretty EM from the beginning, but then like third year, I was like fucking with anesthesia a little bit, and I thought I was gonna jump ship, but I just felt like I wasn't gonna be fulfilled. I'm really into like the social aspects of emergency medicine and like giving back to the community and like our unhoused population. And I felt like you didn't really get those aspects in like anesthesiology. So for like true life fulfillment and like overall job satisfaction, I decided to fully commit to emergency medicine. But yeah, that was my like little deterrence outside of EM.
For me, I same as Alex. I mean, I was pretty set on EM from the beginning. I didn't really have anything that spoke to me. Yeah, not really. It was EM all the way. And the reason why I chose EM, I mean, is the ability to work with all kinds of patients, all walks of life, from any kind of background. The fact that you kind of become a little bit jack of all trades, you need to know a little bit of everything, and whatever skills you learn in the end, they're gonna work. They're gonna be useful even outside of the hospital, which is something that I think not every specialty can say. And also the team environment, just the staff you work with, the other doctors, the attendings, the nurse, EMT, everything. Like I love working in that team environment.
Thanks. I guess we can move on to the next question. It says, what extracurriculars were you involved in at VCOM or outside of VCOM, and how did these impact your application?
I guess I can start. Other than ACOEP and then Sigma Sigma Phi, I wasn't really in any other extracurriculars. I don't feel like it affected my application that much, honestly. I don't know if it was just because the state of where emergency medicine is application wise right now, but I didn't have very many questions about my extracurriculars. They were much more tailored to other, like my EM specific experience. How was your third year rotation? How were your auditions? What experience of emergency medicine did you have prior to applying? And that was seemed to be more where they kind of hit on. I don't know if that was everyone else's experience. That was kind of mine. I didn't have any really questions about my groups or club activities or really anything.
Yeah, I can kind of second that. I had a few extracurriculars, like I was like an anatomy lab intern. I did some research, like the sports physicals and all that. But honestly, one of the experience sections on ERS, I just put like hobbies, and then I listed like all the fun stuff I like to do, and I was by far asked about that way more than any of the other extracurriculars on my application. So if you guys have any like interesting hobbies or not interesting hobbies, put those on your ERS application. They love to talk about that. They love to hear about, more than just your, the kind of medical school side of things. So.
Cool.
And I think that has a lot to do with a lot of students on applications have very similar experiences on their list because there's a finite amount of groups and service opportunities. And really the things that you do that separate you from everybody else, those are the ones they tend to really hit on. Like I went to Kenya twice on medical missions, and twice, and like every interview I had, they asked about that more than they asked about anything I did at VCOM. They're like, "What do you have on your application that's different than the 1,000 other people they get?" And so I feel like if you have a very unique thing, like Pat said, that's like a very important thing to put on your application.
Yeah, I think for me, I had a lot of leadership on my what is it, the application, and so a lot of my interviews were mainly centered on my leadership with minority outreach, that type of thing, and then also mission trips that I did. I included the ones that I did whenever I was in undergrad, and even then they still asked me like what I learned there, and also just different so just about every interview involved my leadership questions, and then some of them involved like, what do you like to do? What extracurriculars? So anything that I actually did leadership wise, like trying to do Spanish workshops, that was a big one for some reason for every residency that I did. And then another one was the organization president for the Hispanic Medical Outreach Club as well. Every residency kind of wanted to start initiatives of like promoting that in their own residency, and so it kind of opened this leeway of how can you contribute to our residency. So I think if you start anything, even if like I've told certain third years, just do like a drive, like a kids drive at your core site for like the pediatric department, like donate some books and put that in your resume because that's a big one.
I think beyond it being a unique something that because that's hard to find, if something that no one else or very few people have. I think it's just something about that you're very passionate about. Like Katrina with the medical outreach, I'm still very passionate about mentorship, and that's something that I did from undergrad all the way till now still, and that's included in my application. And a lot of medical students have mentorship opportunities, and just showing that in your application and during your interviews. It's showing that the passion is, I think, was very important, and also the same with the hobbies. I mean, I think more than my extracurriculars, all of my interviews were about my hobbies. I even included my dog Kai in my application. They also all asked me about Kai to see him and all that. So like things that are part of that show who you are. I think that's the most important part about the extracurriculars or hobbies or anything that shows who you are.
Most of my interviews had to deal with my extracurriculars and not so much my or my hobbies and not so much my extracurriculars, honestly. I think I had maybe one question, two questions total asking me about what my extracurriculars were or research or anything like that, and majority were just about any of the hobbies I listed on ERAS.
Okay, and kind of following up, how important do you think preclinical grades are?
I never got asked once. My grades are like pretty mid, like right in the middle. I wasn't like honor society or nothing, and I don't feel like I was filtered for grades like by any program. It never came up. So just get C's, get your degrees, man. Just lock in.
Yeah, the impression I got was that they didn't really care so much about grades. I don't even think anybody really looked.
Yeah, like don't go fucking fail classes. Like do good and like have a decent GPA and try hard. But like as long as you're like average or like above, I think they're pretty chill.
It goes a long way to just be able to talk to people in interviews, and I feel like that's way more important than grades because, like, EM people, I feel like they're just pretty cool, chill, and if you can just talk to people, I feel like it'll be fine because you made it that far in that application, like, they know you would have been weeded out before that, so everyone will be fine.
Okay, so did you take step 1 and step 2? And then if not, do you think this impacted where you got interviews?
I took step 1 and step 2 also, and I don't know so much for step 1 really. I know that, I don't know, when you put your VSLO like application in, I couldn't figure out how to input both a complex and a step pass into the system. Maybe I'm just dumb and you could, but from my understanding, it was you could only put one of them. And so I just submitted my step score, not my complex passing score in, because I was just trying to be like as competitive as possible. And I don't know if it made a difference. I didn't like apply to anywhere audition wise, but I feel like in terms of step two, it made step two go a lot better for me. And I feel like step two, I got asked on pretty much all of my interviews about my step score, my step two score, and how I prepared and why I took that. So I think for getting interviews, I think step two mattered. And I think for, because it was a part of every single interview I had. But I don't know if it mattered that much. I didn't see the other side. You know, you're looking back, would I've gotten more interviews, less interviews if I didn't? I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Landon on that one. It was kind of hard to tell. I took 1 and 2. 1 was really only important just to help to prepare for 2. I felt pretty ready for it, having taken step 1, but I think I had maybe one person ever mention like anything about step 2. So I'm not really sure if they used it, if they didn't use it, anything like that. But it's kind of hard to tell. But if you are planning on taking it, I know step 1 don't help me prepare for 2.
Yeah.
I did. Oh, go ahead. Victoria.
So I did not take step 1, but I took step 2, and I wish I would have taken step 1 just to prepare me for step 2. I think it did help, like, because I didn't even score that great on step 2, but I feel like it still helped, and no one really mentioned it. I did better on Conlex than I did on step 2, so I think if I would have taken step 1, I probably would have maybe done better on step 2 or been more comfortable taking it. But I think it definitely helped having it on there, just showing that, like, you know, you could pass it like a filter through. I don't think it hurts, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know the other way. If you just didn't take it, it's kind of hard to tell still.
Yeah, I'd go on your oh, sorry, Larry. Go ahead. Okay, true. I would check on go on the residency program's website and check the requirement for what they want when you apply. I know my program, they took either Comets level 1 or step 1, either or, like a pass, but you had to have a USMLE step 2 to even get an interview at the program. So that's for applying for VSLO and for audition rotations. I know there was some, I don't know, Pat, wasn't UIC, didn't they want a step 1 for just to rotate?
Yeah, just for the audition, yeah.
Yeah, so there's some programs when we went through it that wanted a step just to audition. But then when it came to actually applying, UIC, they took step 2, and you didn't need to take step 1 for the residency interview. So just check the site and be careful. You can always reach out to the program coordinators too, if they don't have it posted on the site.
Yeah, I would opt to just reach out anyways. I know a lot of the stuff on the websites is outdated from 2018 or something. So it's always nice to just reach out. And the people that help you coordinate the rotations and all that are always super friendly. I'm sure everyone can agree. So just reach out and get the most updated info because you wouldn't want to miss out on an opportunity.
I did like Victoria. I took step 2, but I did not take step 1, and I didn't feel that me not taking step 1 affected me. Step 2, I felt very comfortable with it. I feel like I was very focused on doing more of my step studying more than complex. Just because I felt like if I did well in step, then that was just going to translate into complex. And I feel like not having step 1, when it just having it didn't really affect me in getting and not getting enough interviews with the step 2. If you have step 2, I think that's enough when it comes to just getting the amount of interviews. Like Victoria said, she said it perfectly. They just want to know that you have the ability to pass that test. And also what Alex said, I did reach out to my top 5 residency programs and see what they were asking if they wanted step 2 or not, and that's how I decided to take step 2 towards the end.
So I did not take step 1 or step 2, and I ended up with a really good number of interviews. So I don't think it hindered me in that way. And I had really good auditions. I had the auditions that I wanted to. I will say, I think not taking step 2 prevented from getting my number 1 ranking. Even though I did get an away rotation there, that was like, I guess they ranked me lower than everyone else. So take that into mind. When I asked, they said they would take one or the other, but they were notoriously known for taking step over COM-LA, so it was kind of like a new shift. So it just depends. You know, if I could go back, maybe I would take it again, or maybe I would take it in general, and then, but maybe not, because I think like where I'm at now is kind of a really good spot for me and my husband. So it just depends.
Cool.
I honestly think it really depends on where you're applying. Because if you want to shoot for the stars and apply super competitive and get some of these top 5 programs in the country, like even with a, there's always that DO bias, there's always that thing, and there's going to be places that even if you are 90th percentile step, they're probably still not going to take you. And just because you have DO behind your name, and that's just going to be something you're going to have to deal with. But there are places that they'll just put a filter step 2 score of X and they'll just filter your application out. And they're not supposed to do that, but who's policing that? Nobody. So I guess it depends on, if you're dead set on ending up in a specific region and you want this specific program for whatever reason, then in my mind, I think that taking, a step 2 can help you a lot, especially down here kind of in the South and some of the bigger academic programs kind of in the South. And they're big on, there's not very many DO schools down here as opposed to the Northeast where there's just as many DO schools and they're cool with COM-LA. So depends on where you want to end up.
The way I thought taking it was just basically like, it's another thing that you put on your application. It's another piece of your application that says like how you are as a student. So it makes it more complete. If you take it, you probably still will get plenty of interviews where you want if you don't take it, but it just adds a little bit more to it if you so choose.
I'll also say like step 2 is way more of a straightforward test. Like if you're worried it's going to be hard or some shit, like it really matches up with like UWorld. I mean, like to an extent. COMLEX is like kind of confusing. Like COMLEX level 1 is if you guys have taken it already. So I would say like step 2 is more straightforward. So don't like let the USMLE name like scare you or anything.
One thing that I didn't know about tests that would be important is on one of my audition rotations at LSU Baton Rouge, we had to take the SAEM test, and that was apparently really important for DOs, which I did not realize that, and it's super hectic during your audition rotation, so just kind of like prepare for that and see if you have to take that test, especially for like DOs, because that's a test that like they'll see both of y'all, like MDs and DOs, take at the same time. So I did not realize that at the time, but that's one other test to just have to take.
And you have to take the SAM test for your 4th year rotation for VCOM. So I did mine, my very first rotation, I did EM on our core site to kind of prepare myself for my auditions. And I had the whole month on the rotation here to prepare for it. And so I could really put in the effort. And then on one of my auditions, they wanted me to take it, and I didn't have to take it on my audition because I'd already taken it. But on another rotation, they let me take a shelf exam. They made me take like a USMLE like shelf exam as opposed to the SAEM, which was much easier because I'd been like fresh off of prepping for UWorld. It was basically just like the bread and butter EM question. So it was really good to like, you're prepping for your rotation, but I took the SAM exam first and I didn't have to take it on one of my auditions. So I got to kind of like bypass that.
We have to take the other version of that test because there's 2 of them. That's nice. That's good.
That's what I thought was going to happen when I took mine first, because I did the same thing. I did my core EM rotation first, took the SAEM exam, and I figured I wouldn't have to take it. Then I ended up having to take the different version. But having taken the first one, they're really similar. Some of the questions I think might have even been repeated, but it's extremely similar. So it's good practice anyway. To do your core rotation first, you get the test out of the way, and then at least you're a little more comfortable with what's going to be coming if you have to take it on rotation.
Okay. How did you decide where to audition? And then did you match where you did an audition?
I tried to like geographically target. So I'm from Arizona. I knew I probably wanted to come back to Arizona, but I wasn't sure. But I also wanted to explore like New York City and Chicago because I had like no ties to the area. So I knew I probably wouldn't get interviews up there if I didn't. So I'm like from Arizona, went to like a random DO school in like middle of nowhere, Louisiana. Why would Chicago or New York give me an interview? So I did one in University of Arizona where I matched, and then I did one at Rush in Chicago, and then one at MIMO in New York City, and that helped open up like my interview trail. Like I got a lot of interview offers from the regions where I had slows, especially like Chicago. I guess it helped out, and then kind of like through the East Coast a little bit, and then the West Coast opened up because I was from Arizona. I did an audition in Arizona, and then the South was open because I like did med school in Louisiana, so I got like Texas interviews. So like kind of helped cast a wide web. That's kind of how I did it. I know everybody kind of had their method to it.
I did my ways. So I'm originally from Illinois, so I did my first one in Chicago, back home, and then I did two down in Louisiana. So I did my ways, basically areas that I wanted to go and would also fit into my schedule. And so I got the ones that I got, the rotation I did in the South, I got interviews there, and I got a lot of interviews in the Southeast. For whatever reason, I didn't get so many back home, back north, even though I'm from there. But I definitely got a few interviews in that region as well. So I would say that doing in a way in a region that you want to go to is definitely a good move, because you'll probably get attention from some of the other programs nearby, even if it's not the one that you're rotating at.
Yeah, my big thing was location as well, and I'm from Chicago, and I did 4 auditions in Chicago. So yeah, I realized I kind of like shot myself in the foot, doing all my auditions in Chicago. But I knew truly like that's where I wanted to be. I just put all of my eggs in one basket, and obviously it worked out. But yeah, if you're really targeting one location and you can't really see yourself going anywhere else, I mean, I can talk to you more about that if you want, but yeah, I mean, it can work out. You can just do all of your auditions in that place. It'll shoot you in the foot with some interviews like across the country because they're gonna be like, oh, I see you did 4 auditions in this one city. Like, why are you interested in us? And I got that question a lot, and I had to kind of justify it, but yeah, definitely doable.
I am from Florida, and I did two auditions in Florida, but then I also did an EM ultrasound in LA, and that helped me out to open up, like Alex said, that West Coast spots for my interviews, and I think that helped me. And with VCOM telling you like, oh, you can't do a certain amount of weeks in the same specialty, that's how I was able to kind of like do the 2-week ultrasound. So it doesn't really have to be an audition rotation. I feel like doing an EM related rotation, that even if it's 2 weeks in ultrasound or wilderness or anything like that, that can also help you. Or if it's like something where you can get to see and talk to the EM people. So if you're on a trauma, if you do a trauma rotation, that can you have a lot of communication with the EM staff, and that kind of also gets a foot in the door. So that can also help you.
So I did an audition here in the South in UMSC, and I did one in Albany, New York. And I agree with like being regionally doing auditions, because every single interview I had from up in New York or Connecticut, they were like, "Why'd you apply up here? You don't know anybody up here. You have nothing up here. Why'd you audition up here? Like, why here? You're from Louisiana. This is so different." They were just like blunt about it. And it was just like saying I wanted to try the new region out, but if I wouldn't have done the audition up there, it wouldn't have opened that area at all. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't, because it's polar opposites in every way from down here to up there. But I will say that it's not, while it's important to regionally do your auditions, it's more important of timing and how well you do on them. I ran into the problem of during the middle of my second audition, interviews, like you submitted applications and the universal interview release date opened up, and I only had one standard letter, and all of these programs required 2. So then I was left with 2 weeks in a rotation. I had to finish it, wait another week to get my second letter, and then email every single program and be like, hey, I've got a new letter input because I asked the student coordinator, the clerkship director, in my second audition, how do programs do standard interviews, and they say on the standard interview day they print out every single applicant, they put it in 3 piles: will interview, in the middle, not going to interview. They get rid of the not going to interviews, and then they don't look at applications again. They print them out on physical paper. And then, so if you upload things and you don't let them know, they aren't going to check ERAS every week to see if you upload anything. You have to physically let them know. So I had to then email every single program, and I'd probably say 70% of my interviews after I emailed them and told them my input my second slow. So I would recommend getting your 2 auditions done before the release date so you can have it in your application. And that was not something I knew was as important. But it's also important that when you go up there, you do a really good job, because if you get a good slow, the programs will be like, hey, you had a really good letter from here. How did you get that letter? And they'll directly bring it up, because I don't know if you know this, you can't see your evaluations for all the first and second years. You can't see them. You say, I waive my right to view them. So you do this rotation, and then you have no idea what they said about you. So you have to go up there and work really hard, and those letters matter, but also don't do like I did and put yourself in a hole and have to cold email every single program and then get ghosted by 90% of the emails you sent. So just some advice.
Timing is definitely important. Programs also don't want to look bad. Like, they don't want to look like they've had bad students rotate through them. And so I had 2 of mine tell me that they're going to try and write you the best letter you can. So just work as hard as you can and be a good person, basically. Because if they have a student that doesn't look good or has got a bad slow, that looks bad on them as well. So chances are you're going to get a decent slow or a good slow if you just show up and you work hard and you're respectful.
Yeah, I think like the scheduling your away rotations is so important for the success of like your interviews. For sure, like I am really happy with having done my first month as my ER rotation at VCOM, because I basically told my preceptor, hey, like I'm about to go on away rotations. Can you just beat the hell out of me and like show me what I'm supposed to be doing right? And so they did, and I got to do the SAEM test. And so I went in on my first away rotation immediately after that, got my first letter, then went to the second rotation, and eventually, like I kind of ranked them according to which one was the least likely I wanted to end up at, and which one would be my number 1. So like I had 3, so my third, second, and then first in that order. And so by the time that the interview like invites were being sent out, I had 2 of my letters already established. And then my last letter, honestly, I was too tired and I was like, I'm not going to send an email to every program that I applied. So I just like requested the SLOE for the program, and I just wanted it for that single program to have it. Because I had enough already and I was getting enough interviews as well.
I think that 2 letters is, I only had 2 slows because I only did 2 additional rotations. I didn't really thought I needed to do a third one, and it served me well. So I think you only need really 2. And third, like don't stress if you don't have a third slow. It's my point. Like you'll be fine with the second. If you need a third one, because then it might be because like if you have any, I don't know, reflex or anything, but like 2 is fine. Like don't stress over if you don't have a third. And the way I schedule mine, I took step 2 in complex, and within like 5 days of 4th year officially starting, that's when I did my first audition, and then I did a 2-week ultrasound rotation, and then after that I did my audition at my number 1 program. And I feel like also doing that ultrasound rotation before my number 1 helped me a lot, because I mean we didn't get taught anything about ultrasound, and that helped me just kind of like get the feel of it and know what I was doing and like how to just turn on the freaking machine. And so when I did on my second audition, I got to like kind of like kind of like show off those skills and learn more about it, and not just be like, well, I've never done this before. So that definitely helped me.
I'm with Valeria on this one. 2 is definitely more than enough. I did 3. I only asked for 2 slows. I just didn't feel like asking for the third one from the last one. And definitely structure your rotations so that you're prepared for your number one. So I did my core EM rotation, then I did another audition at one that I was like sort of interested in to really prepare myself for my 30-hour rotation at my number one program, so that I would be as prepared as I possibly could be and look as good as I could.
There, something that confused me when talking about auditions and slows is there are different types of slows. So I just sent a little link to a PDF explaining the different types because that confused me. Also, what was I gonna say? Oh gosh, I forgot. Oh well, I'll think of it later. Oh, so I'm from Louisiana. I've only lived in Louisiana, and whenever I was applying, I really got the question of like, especially in Texas, like why here? If you have family in certain places, like my sister just moved to Texas, even though Texas is huge, I put that on there. They wanted to know where she moved and like if I was familiar with the place. So make sure that like you know stuff about the city and you love it and be very like positive about it because they want to know that you'd be willing to move there. And if you have a significant other, I would also be prepared to answer questions like, oh yeah, he's like got a job or, you know, he can get a job over here. He's excited about it too because they want to know that you would actually move and they're not just like wasting a spot.
So I go with that. So two of my top three ranks when I sent out all my emails to say when I second slow, I picked 5 programs and I wrote like a letter of intent where I was like basically telling them in there like, hey, I have a new one uploaded. These are the qualities I have. These are the things I like about your program. And 2 of my top 3 were kind of some, reach programs for me, but I have family that lives within 2 hours of there. And I made sure to put that in there. And that is what I think got me those interviews. I ended up matching at Wake Forest, and I have family that's about 45 minutes south of there. And in my interview, they specifically said, you have family up here. And then 2 of my interviewers asked me about it. So like, if you have family somewhere, like make sure you write like a little letter. It's like a couple paragraphs saying like, hey, I have family there, because they want to know that you're going to be happy where they're at. You need to tell them like, hey, I'm familiar with the area. I visited there, things like that. Because if not, if I went up to Minnesota, I would die in the freezing cold weather, and I would not be happy up there at all. And so they want their residents to be happy. So if you have family living somewhere, that's like a good thing to let them know.
Yeah, you can always lie and say you have cousins in the area, or like, it helps.
Finesse your application a little bit. Don't lie, but you can tweak it a little bit.
Everyone's related somehow, anyways.
Yeah, my interview season, like they think I have family in like every state in the United States, but whatever.
Yeah, like I had family in Houston at one point. They don't even live there anymore, but I still said I did. And I got family in Florida or whatever, and I would say that they were closer to the program than they actually were. I mean, they were still technically there, but
Okay, we got another question. I don't really know what this means, so if you guys know, you can answer. If you don't, it's fine. They asked, did y'all use geographic signals? New option for people, usefulness, question mark.
I did use them, and I think that helped me a lot. I think I did Southeast. I think I only ranked 2 like areas, the Southeast and then West Coast. And I got all my interviews from like in the Southeast area that I applied for. I got interviews with all of them there, and that also helped me as well in the West Coast because my boyfriend lives in LA, and like I have that connection there. But sometimes they want to know more, like why else are you interested in it? And before the interview, they don't really know if you have family or whatever. So like geographic signals like help you get that foot in the door again. So definitely use them.
Could you like explain what the geographic signal is?
Yes, so I think it's a new thing from our year. You get 3 options. They divide the US in different areas, so like Southeast, or it's not even South, they call it like South Atlantic, West Coast, Midwest, different areas like that. And you get to pick 3 and say why you're signaling those areas. So if you apply to programs there, then they see it.
So I definitely, the Southeast area, I forget exactly what it was called. I signaled that area, and that definitely helped me get a lot of interviews in Texas, Louisiana, all those states, especially even Texas, where I didn't get a single audition or even hear back from any of the audition rotations. I got a lot of interviews there. I think Florida's in a different region. I ranked that one as well as my third one, and I got a lot of interviews there as well. For whatever reason, I'm from Illinois, so when I ranked the Midwest, I only got 3 interviews in the Midwest for some odd reason. I don't know if it was because VCOM being a southern school, something like that. Maybe because I only did 1 rotation in the Chicago area, but it allows you to justify like why you want to rank this place and this and that. And so the Midwest didn't work out for me, whatever reason, even though I said I've lived there for 20 plus years of my life and my entire family's there. But I definitely got more interviews in the Southeast because I did that than if I hadn't.
Okay, this is the last question I'll ask, and then I'll like open it up if anyone else wants to ask questions or if y'all have like further advice. But they asked, what are some questions you recommend asking during auditions or interviews that helped you get a feel for a program?
One good one that I picked up on the trail, I asked like, what is like the biggest hindrance to your wellness that the program offers, and what's the strongest benefit to your wellness that your program offers? And I got some unique responses from that one.
I made sure. Oh, go ahead.
My favorite question to ask was, how would you describe your intern class? And I asked it because you can ask it to a lot of different interviewers, and they all give you a very different answer. And some people would say like, oh, our interns don't really like hang out, or they don't really get together, they're not close, and others talk about how close they were. So I felt like it kind of gave me an insight to their personalities and their mental health. And it was a question that I feel like didn't get asked often, so it was just, I liked it.
I centered my application around like the importance of like critical care, and a lot of the places I applied to had like extra ICU months, and I made sure to ask on your off-service rotations, like the ones you do multiple on, what is your specific role? Because there's some programs that you may do an ortho rotation, but all you're doing is writing their notes, or you may be doing these things where, like, are you in anesthesia? Do you get to leave at 11? Do you get to tube in the morning and leave, or are you there all day? Or, you know, on the ICU rotation, like how is the ICU structured? And some hospitals will have it where there's like an attending, a third year, second year you, and like what is your specific role? How many patients are you carrying? And different things like that. And how like your role as an intern, and how does your role progress through the 3 years? Because everywhere you'll look at all these programs and their websites all say the same exact thing, but they mean completely different things. And if you don't specifically ask, they're not going to tell you. They're going to be like, yeah, we have graduated responsibility. Like, well, what does that mean for your specific program? Because everywhere I read says we have a lot of pathology, high volume, sick patients. Well, like, are you getting to take care of the sick patients? Or are you like, how? And another thing that I asked is, how does your hospital handle boarding in the ER? Are the ER people responsible of taking care of boarded patients? Is there a step down unit? Because one of my auditions, the ER was just like jam packed with boarded patients, and they were operating out of like 4 rooms. And every patient in the hospital was boarding in the ER. So you had like 5 residents in 4 rooms. And I was like, this is not okay. So I made sure to ask every single like site or residency. I was like, how do you handle boarded patients? How long are they staying down there? Because that really is going to alter. Like, you're not going into internal medicine. You don't want to come on shift and have to do, you know, the patient's been here 4 days and you're managing their chronic illnesses. Does the intern, like the internal medicine team, take care of them, or do you take care of them?
I liked asking how diverse not only was the patient population, but also like the staff, the attendings, and even the residency class, and what kind of like global health or medical outreach opportunities they had during that. I also like to ask what was their favorite and least favorite rotation, and then why is ICU your least favorite rotation? You know, because we had to do 24-hour calls every 4 days, or this like that tells you kind of on the same lines as Landon said, like what's your role and what to expect. And I also ask if you have to do any 24-hour on calls at any point during your rotation. I personally I hate 24-hour calls. I think they're the worst. We don't need them. And there's a lot of programs that use in trauma rotation or ICU, you have to do a Q4 days or Q3 days. And there's some others that they're like, we don't do that. We're ER people. We don't have to. And some that you only have to do 2 or 3 in the whole 3 years of residency. So it's ultimately things that you find important, like if there's mentorship opportunities, minority outreach, and all this stuff.
I think one of my favorite ones was what's like the best thing about the program, and then what's the downfall, or what do you feel like y'all are still working on? That question brought a lot of red flags up that I didn't realize people would admit to things, and I'm like, oh, this is really good. I'm glad you're telling me this right now. It was one of those things that at first I was scared to ask because I thought people weren't going to be truthful or honest. And then suddenly everyone's being very truthful and very honest. And then I would go on an away rotation. One of my away rotations, that was like one of the questions that at the first day. And it was one of those big, like, whoa, that's a big deficiency in the residency. And so I think that's really, really important to just address and ask. Because if you do end up there, you don't want to rank a program and then find out that that's a big deficiency they have. Another question that I like to ask was, are there any mid-levels? Do they work in the ER? Do I work with them? And how we correlate? Some residencies, kind of lack in training you for lower acuity. And I mean, that's okay, but at the same time, you want to be confident whenever you go and work out in the real world. So ideally, my best is like, are there any, nurse practitioners, PAs, or are we having to work alongside them, which would be great. And then if they're not there, that means you get to cover as well.
I like to ask every program what changes they anticipate were going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. And that revealed some red flags to me as well. Like some programs revealed that they were really excited in about 4 or 5 years they were going to be a level 1 trauma center, and that's something I was looking for. So they were immediately kind of moved down my list because they're not going to have what I'm looking for at the beginning. And that was something they were super excited about, but it really doesn't help me out at all because I'm going to be gone before it gets there. And so several programs I interviewed at had similar things where they were bringing in things in their 5-year plan that I wanted in a residency and weren't going to be there by the time I was done or by the end, near the end. And so they got moved farther down my list because they weren't going to have what I wanted by the time I was done.
No, I asked that same question specifically to the program director every single interview, and I got some where it was like, okay, well, that's not going to affect me at all. But then, like where I matched, I got it. Oh, it's not fully broadcasted out right now, but during your second year, we've outgrown our ER, so now we're building an entire new addition to the hospital that's going to be 3 more ICUs and double the size of our emergency department because we need that extra space. And that was nowhere on there, like PowerPoint. And I was like, okay, so that tells me directly, like, they have too much volume for their current ER and they're increasing it and now they're upgrading everything. So like asking that question kind of was like, okay, well, that's a very positive thing, but you can get some negative things on different, especially if there's a new program director. Also check that because they come in and they tend to like change things up.
I also like to ask how is their PEDS EM exposure, because it can be either longitudinal, meaning that you have shifts throughout the year, or if you have only one PEDS EM month, it was important for me because pediatrics is seasonal. You have flu season, you have all these different seasons, and only 1 month in PEDS EM is not always best, but that's another good question to ask.
One question that I got asked that threw me off is I did an audition rotation, and then in my interview they asked me what was one thing I would change about the program or that I didn't like. So be prepared for that answer because you want to stay positive, but you also want to give a truthful answer, and that threw me off. So I just be prepared for them to flip that on you.
Okay, I guess I'll open it up if anyone else has any questions or if you guys have any big pieces of advice you want to talk about? Just, yeah.
I have a couple of questions. So the first one, did anyone do any dual residencies, and I guess advice about that? Because a lot of times on VSLO, I'll see, for instance, LSU also has 2 locations. Like, do you want to audition for EM, but do you need to also audition for the other specialty? Like, I guess, how does that work?
Do you mean double apply, or you mean the LSU Shreveport program that's like emergency medicine / family medicine?
Yeah, like that. Like the LSU New Orleans has emergency medicine and pediatrics, like not PDM, but like kind of the same as like EM and FM. So just going about that route, like, do you need to, how do you show interest, I guess, in both, if that makes sense?
You could do a PDM rotation. Get a letter from
Yeah,
both.
I did see that. So that was something I was like, okay, maybe that, but.
I don't know. I think it depends on what you're primary applying to. If your primary specialty is going to be emergency medicine, you have to get 2 slows. Most places require 2. So if you don't have 2, you may not. They're going to filter you out. And so if your primary is emergency medicine, I would focus on doing your EM auditions. And from people I know that applied family medicine, so many people match family medicine didn't even do auditions. They just got a letter from a core site or something like that. So it depends on what, because I know a common one is EM, IM. I didn't apply that. I don't know that pathway, but from my understanding, getting auditions for IM is not nearly as important as EM auditions. So if you're considering EM at all, you need to do EM auditions.
I could be completely wrong. Completely wrong with this, but say New Orleans has both, right? Both peds and EM. There's the potential that on your days off you can ask to shadow, get to know, like do something in pediatrics there, get in contact with somebody that can at least get you in the building, get you to know people that are there. So you're not on official rotation, you're there in your free time, but you're still getting to know the people that work there. You're getting to know the attendings, the faculty, and I've heard of a person or two that's done something similar to that. I don't know how that really gets set up, but it could be an option.
Yeah, if you want PEM, like PTM, like a lot of programs have PEM audition rotations also, so I definitely recommend that. If you want like EM, IM, I know like my program, they had like an EM / crit care where you rotated with medicine for 2 weeks and you also rotated with EM for 2 weeks. So maybe if a program has something like that, that could help too.
That sounds good. And then, so the other part of the question would be, like, I know I'm definitely very much EM bound, but when I'm looking at, for instance, again, LSU, how they have Baton Rouge and they have New Orleans, and you're doing audition rotations. So kind of my dilemma is like, okay, New Orleans has this program that I'm really interested in, but if for whatever reason I want to be a part of that, we have a house close to Baton Rouge, so there's a lot of like regional attachment. Who should I audition with? Because my understanding is like that you shouldn't audition at both places since they're both LSU. Or is that incorrect?
So I don't think it matters, honestly. I auditioned at Baton Rouge and Shreveport.
Okay.
It didn't really seem. They're all kind of separate, and so it's not like they're one big program like you would think just because the LSU name. They're very distinct. Like New Orleans is a 4-year program, where the other 2 are 3. Oshner is also a 3-year program, but there really isn't any sort of affiliation between the 3 besides the letters. So if you're interested in more than one in that system, I would definitely, or if they're going to be high on your list, I would definitely try to do an audition at 2 of them if you're interested.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I did the same, Shreveport and Baton Rouge, and I think if you're gonna rank them high, like both of those, you should definitely put your name in the hat for away rotations, because I wholeheartedly believe that if you do an away rotation, they're gonna rank you above people that they didn't, get to hang out with for a whole month. And like he said, they are very different. Like Shreveport, Baton Rouge for me, they didn't even seem like they were both LSU tied. Like they were their own entity in itself.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think where the audition rotations where it comes into play is if you dual applied. So if you did like LSU internal medicine at the lake and LSU emergency medicine and did like auditions at both of those at the same program or the same site, that's where they might talk about that. But you can definitely do it the same. They know that you're applying to multiple places. Like that's totally understandable. That'd be crazy if you just applied to one place. So that's totally reasonable to audition at multiple places. And, it's just if you're doing two different specialties at the same site, they might talk about that, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay, I have a question for y'all. This might be kind of silly, but it sounds like a lot of y'all were, when picking like places you wanted to apply and audition, sounds like a lot of it was kind of like geographically motivated, if that makes sense, like where you have family or where you want to live. But like even in the bigger cities, like how did you know what programs? How did you know what programs had good vibes? How did you know what programs you would want to even do an audition at? Like, is there like Reddit? How do you guys just know these things? Do people talk about it? I feel like, I don't know, like it might be a silly question, but how do you find out?
So I had an idea of where I wanted to be, and so I looked at as many programs as I could in the regions that I wanted to be in, and I read their websites. I looked at the areas, all the different things that activities that were available to me and stuff like that, and just try to get a feel from what I could on their websites, and then I just applied to all those different programs, and then the ones that offered me an opportunity, I went back and I looked and compared, and that's how I made the decision to where I wanted to go and how I figured out what program seemed good for an audition and all.
Yeah, and that was part of my justification for doing 4 auditions. Obviously, a big place like Chicago, they have like 9 EM programs, and I really wanted to sample as many as I possibly could. I know I commented 4 was a bit much. I think 2 or 3 is a little more reasonable. But even when you're on those auditions, you can talk to the residents about the other programs. Like they know a lot more about them than you might think they do. Otherwise, yeah, just reaching out to the current residents. People are very friendly. I've come to learn across like the interview trail. Reach out to residents from other programs. DM them on Instagram. Just reach out and try to find out as much as possible.
I think it helps knowing kind of what you specifically want to get out of a program, because it is difficult while you're doing these virtual interviews and these virtual like meets the night before to really get an idea. But like knowing, like I knew that I was 100% going to end up in community medicine after residency. So big academic center was not a thought of mine where I'm like going to pursue this specialty. I'm considering this. So a lot of my applications went to community programs, and I wanted to find programs that had community-based training. Ironically, I ended up in a gigantic academic center, but originally my goal was to end up in a place that would train community. But I asked that, like, what percentage are going into community? They're like, we're an academic center, but 60% going to community. I'm like, okay, that's good enough for me. But really getting an idea of what you want out of a training, because some places, if they have every specialty under the sun and they consult everybody, you're just going to be the middleman instead of doing things. So, it's really deciding what you want, where you want to live, what's going to be good for you. Like I applied to New York City, but I can't live in New York City. This is about as big as the town I'm from, 30,000. Can't go somewhere that's like 12 million. I couldn't do it. So really determining what is going to help you prosper and what's going to be, because residency is going to be hard. What place and what things in the location in the program are going to help you make residency the easiest it could possibly be in terms of living, not like the training. You want the training to be hard, but you don't want to have to train really hard and then go home and struggle. That was something that was important to me. I don't want to come home and struggle to pay bills and things because, your Brooklyn apartment's $5,000. I didn't want to do something like that. I wanted to make sure that where I ended up would be, good for me, I guess mental and like health wise.
One thing that I did was, start just like following programs on Instagram, and they'll start advertising like, oh, we have like hang out with the residents, and it's even before ERAS opens, or what was the other thing? If you have friends or like even us as future interns, like just that's also how I started asking about, oh, which programs did you apply to? Why did you apply to that? And then how did you rank them? What did you like about those? And also there's some programs, for example, there's one in Florida that what I did is that they have like lectures for fourth year students, like 1 hour lecture, EKG or pharmacy and stuff like that. And that's also a way to like connect with the faculty, see how the vibe is on Zoom. And that's I think most residency programs have events like that during when it's like audition season, and that gives you a good idea of the vibe of the program.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
I have a question about how many auditions y'all applied at the same time. Like, I guess I'm a little worried of like sending 2 or 3 out, maybe only at a time, because you don't want to send out like a bunch, right? In case you get accepted and you have to figure out schedule wise. So, and then also the second part is, how long did you wait to hear back from them before like being like, oh, they're not gonna come back to me, or did you get a response from all of them?
I think we all kind of had different techniques on this. I like personally applied to a bunch of programs for like a bunch of dates, like right off the bat, and it like kind of fucked me over for like some programs. But yeah, some programs would be like, oh, I saw you applied to like this July date and you applied to August. We don't have July, but we have August. So I like was able to get some that way. I know some others of us like on this chat like just applied to like one program for one date and they were successful with that method too. So it's kind of tough to say like what the right thing to do is.
So I knew going in. I knew going in I was gonna try to do 3. And I just ranked them, like I applied to 5 if I remember correctly, and I ranked the dates according, because they let each program you apply to, you can do like 3 preferences, I think is what I remember. And so I did my preference number 1 for each one according to how I wanted it to like lay out. And then as I got my acceptances, I would go in and like delete the preference for that date specifically, because I no longer needed that date taken up. And then as I had like my second one, I ended up like, declining or canceling the other 2 that I hadn't heard from yet. So I never actually like declined an offer. I just kind of heard from them within like the 2 weeks that I applied. And yeah.
So I applied to 7, and I applied for all the days, and then I just took the first 2 I got. So what I didn't realize is if you get an offer from one of them and it may not be your top choice, they're like, you have 72 hours to tell us if you want this rotation or not. And so you're like, oh man, what if I say I don't want this? One, if you cancel, that immediately tells the program, oh, he doesn't care, he doesn't want us enough. So then that could hurt you down the road when you apply. But also you could say, no, I don't want this rotation, and then not get another one. And so I applied to 7 that I absolutely wanted, and I would want to go to any of those 7, and just took the first 2, and then immediately withdrew my application from the other 5, because I didn't want 2 weeks later to get an offer and be like, I can't do that, sorry, and then immediately like shoot myself in the foot. So that was something that I think that sucks about the process, is that it's a really good way to like, hurt yourself down the road. But I mean, it is how it is. So you just kind of got to be smarter about how you apply and make sure that if you get an offer, it's one you want to take and somewhere you want to go. Because once you say no, that immediately, I wouldn't even like probably send an application to them later. Waste your money on that.
It's also like a time game. Like a lot of these are like first come, first serve. So if you just sit, like I don't know what you did, Abigail, but like if you only threw out 3 applications and you're just waiting, and you're like trying to wait till you don't hear back from them, it might not be a good strategy to like wait like a month and then apply to other ones. It's better to just throw out like a wide net and like get your apps in as early as possible. Just to maximize your chances.
Thank you. Did y'all hear back from all of the ones that y'all had? Like even rejections? Did you got back, or there was some that didn't even ever come back?
I'm still waiting for some today.
All right, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah, they'd be sending rejections like all late. Like, unfortunately, you did not get an interview. I'm like, bro, we already matched,
I had a few that were like, we have an sorry.
Go ahead, dude, you're good.
I had a few that were like, we have an opening, and I'm like, I already interviewed at your program.
I've seen ones like on the spreadsheet where someone's like in their second year of residency and then they get like an audition rejection or like a interview rejection on their application, and they're like 2 years into residency because, for whatever reason, we have to be professional, but they absolutely do not have to be professional.
Remember, I'm sorry.
No.
When you apply to multiple dates, and apply to multiple programs, that's what I did. And then the second that one person said, oh, we can do this date, then you can just go into the other programs you applied to and withdraw that one date. So then it's not there anymore. And the chances of someone sending you that acceptance at the same exact time is, well, I'm not shoot myself in the foot, but probably pretty low. So just watch it closely and then just withdraw that one date. That way it's not available for them to even say oh, you want to do this date and have to decline.
Also, what I was going to say is if you haven't gotten an away rotation and, it's EM that you're trying to do, always call. You can always call and say, hey, calling to see what my status is, if there's any availabilities. I know a few people that it was probably June and they were calling, trying to get 2 away rotations because they hadn't gotten any, and they somehow, got it in. So, it's not too late to continue asking, and of course be polite and nice and not weird and strange and hammering them. But I think reaching out and always kind of telling them, hey, I'm still here, it not only shows that you're dedicated and you're going to continue with EM, but it also shows that you really are trying to get those slowies to continue forward. And I think, people that didn't match, from what I've read on Reddit and other places, it's because they never got an away rotation. So I think if that's anything to motivate you to call or email, just keep that in the back of your mind, because there's always going to be a program that's going to have someone either decline or some life emergency happen and they had to step away from the away rotation.
Yeah, Abigail, I doubt you're trying to come to Arizona, but if you're trying to go to any of our programs and you haven't heard back, you can hit us up too if you want us to try to escalate it or whatever.
I don't think I'm going further than Texas, but thank you. Appreciate it.
True. We got some Texas in the group. We got some Louisiana in the group.
Thank you.
I gotta bounce, guys, but I'm leaving my phone and my email if anyone needs a second set of eyes on their personal statement or ERAS. I would love to help.
Any other questions from any of you guys?
Is there any tools off the top of y'all's heads that are good to just have on to help with rotations? I think I'm doing the same thing as some of y'all did. I'm going to do the core site first and then kind of move on. But I just want to know if there's anything you
The IMRA book. Please get it. The IMRA book, it comes in a little kit, or you can buy it off of Amazon. Get the differentials and I don't know what the other one is, the basics. The basics and the fundamentals, those two. Those two are high key. Keep them in your white coat pocket. As you're walking to go see the patient, they tell you what the chief complaint is. Start digging in that differentials. That's going to be important. Also, buy yourself a little medical student badge. It literally helped my attendings figure out who the heck I was, because one, they've never seen my face, and two, they're more likely to reach out to me and say, hey, let me come show you this procedure. And yeah. Oh, the shears that are foldable. It wasn't like, it didn't do anything other than like make me feel useful at certain points, because like I could unfold it, clip it to my scrub bottom, and then, pull it out whenever it was needed. So that was like a nice little moment every so often. And get the Amazons. Don't get like the super expensive ones, because they were like $20 versus like $75. And yeah, they're great.
This suture app, I don't know the other name. It literally just says, oh wait, I'm blurred. Hold on. It literally says suture app. I still use this on my rotations, and you put in like where the location of the cut is and what it looks like, and it literally tells you what suture to use, a suture technique, and it's so nice because I would literally just run into the corner and look and figure out what I needed to get and all the supplies, and like if it were a different type of method, watch the video real quick so that I could go and do it on my audition rotation. They also have the same thing for fractures, and it's free, so I would definitely use that, because if you like know what you're doing there, I feel like it looks good for audition rotations.
I did kind of like Zach did, and I took like the IndyCalc app, and I took some of the really good like scoring systems and things, and I transferred them to like a little field notes notebook that I kept in my front pocket, because if you're walking around with your phone, sometimes it looks like if you're sitting here trying to get IndyCalc to work, it can like look a certain way. So I had like this book that had like basic rules, like different types of fractures, what suture to use, how long, basic antibiotics, like really quick, like things were really like important, like high yield facts. And I would see a patient and formulate a plan, like patient needs antibiotics. I'd open it and be like, okay, here, this antibiotic. And I'd go and say, I think patient needs this antibiotic. And so even if you don't understand the scoring system, you could be like, patient's Canadian head rules thing is this. And then the attending's like, whoa. It's like, I literally opened this and was like, calculated the score and went over there, and they think you like, anything helps. You don't have to know everything. Sometimes you just gotta like fake it till you make it. You have very little responsibility, but you can really wow them with like the really nitty gritty, because they love that kind of stuff, even if it's like useless. But they love that kind of stuff.
MD Calc also has a website I found, because I didn't want to look like I was on my phone all the time either, and so I used that to come up with whatever scoring system I thought I needed. Because a few times I was like trying to look up a formula or do a formula, and the resident I was working with, the was with me, I was like, dude, just use MD Calc. You don't need to know that anymore.
Also, on your audition rotation, know how to present a patient and know like a good differential, and know, because it's very different from an IM rotation. Like it's not that long. It's very different from third year to fourth year. So make sure you're able to make that transition and presenting like worst case scenario first, and have a plan. A plan is very big in fourth year. Know what you're going to do with the patient, and like where you're going to put them, if you're going to discharge them, what you want to order. Because I feel like that kind of helps them know where you're at, even if you're wrong. Just like be able to tell them some type of plan.
Almost every patient I presented they always ask, what do you want to do about it, or what do you want to do? So from third year, you want to figure out what's going on. Fourth year, they want to know, okay, come up with something, whether it's right or wrong, come up with a plan.
This is something I was not expecting, because on all of our rotations, we have an attending that fills out our evals. The end of every one of my shifts, I gave an eval to the third year resident I was working with. And so that third year would fill out the eval, and then they would submit all of them, and they would do a collective from the different residents you worked with. So I would make sure that I was like, hey, you want me to write that note for you? And doing things like that, like I'll write that note, hey, this patient needs sutures, I'll do them. And anything that makes their life as a third year resident easier, they love that stuff. And that's how you get like them to add those extra little points on there, because you're not going to spend much time with the attending. You may get like one attending shift, but a majority of the time you're with the third year resident. And so making their life easier gets you better evals and can get you a better slow.
Yeah, it's like really a performance. Like, be like vocal about what you're doing. Like, if the attending's by, like, hey, I'm gonna go suture up the patient in room 12, or like, hey, I just grabbed this patient blah blah blah. Like, don't be annoying, but like make sure they know what you're doing. Make sure they like know you're being great, you know? Because I had some like I was just like crushing it, like under the radar, just being like a quiet mouse, just like doing things. And then like I would get a shift eval, and they'd be like, you know, like moderately quiet individual, like kept to himself, like was an okay member of the team. And I'm like, bro, I just like hustled, you know? So like make sure they know what you're doing, you know? Like specifically the attendings who's writing your eval, because the residents will see it because they're with you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
possible to be doing. Sorry, Christina, go on.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, make sure that you know how to suture, what equipment you're gonna need. Don't rely on the resident to like tell you, go get the suture kit, go get gauze. Like, you need to like show up to orientations knowing, oh, hey, do you want a suture? And you being like, yeah, let me go get the supplies. And you just walk away and come back with everything. So like, really, if you're scared of suturing, make sure that day one, you are not gonna be afraid of going and like, taking care of a laceration, knowing like when to staple versus suturing and which type of suturings. Like that suturing app, it was Chef's Kiss, perfect. And yeah, just not being afraid of like, if they say, who wants to suture, you jump up. Like, it doesn't matter if it's gonna look like you're a gunner, but at that point it shows you're enthusiastic, you're not willing to just, keep the seat warm, and you're just trying to help out. So
Yeah, don't be afraid to do things. If there's an opportunity that comes up, even if you're nervous to do it, just do it. They're not going to let you like kill anybody or hurt anybody. They're going to be there to guide you through it if you don't know what you're doing. I know for a fact on one of my first slowies, because they told me about it in my interview, that the attending was super impressed that someone offered me a laceration. I just went and I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I just went and did it. And they were super impressed by that. And then if you're doing all the work like Alex is saying, make sure the attending knows. So like, you might present to the resident you're working with, but they still have to present to their attending. So even if they present it to their attending, just tell the attending exactly what you told the resident. That way they know what's going on. You're in the loop. Now they know you're doing all the work that you had already done.
Does anyone have any other questions? I don't think so. Okay, I guess we could go ahead and end it here. Thank you guys so much for talking to us. It was really great, really helpful for people. And good luck next year.
Yeah, thank y'all so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Good luck.
Yeah, feel free to reach out with anything to our VCOM emails.
Thank you.